Today's lesson is about annotating our text. I'm going to walk you through some of the techniques that I use and some of the tools that I use when I am annotating a text. And I'm basing today's tools and markups on this part of our slide. The circling, question marks, starring and underlining, and jotting notes in the margin. So our article today is Hijacked Jets Destroy Twin Towers and Hit Pentagon. Hijackers rammed jetliners into each of New York's World Trade Center towers yesterday, toppling both in a hellish storm of ash, glass, smoke, and leaping victims. When I read that first sentence, I think some of the word choices, rammed jetliners, hellish storm of ash, glass, smoke, and leaping victims. Those are some pretty intense word choices, and they help me think that this is not going to be a happy article. This is a pretty intense article, so I may have to do some closer paying attention. So I'm also going to put a text box. I'm going over here to text box. I'm going to place a text box there. And because I'm going to choose an emoji just to kind of show me that this beginning part, like I said, is pretty intense and doesn't really give me a happy feeling inside. I'm not going to use the text box like that very often. I'm actually going to write some text in there. But for this opening paragraph, opening sentence, that's what I was feeling. There was no official count, but President Bush said thousands had perished, and in the immediate aftermath, the calamity was already being ranked the worst and most audacious terror attack in American history. Well, I'm finding some words there that I'm not really sure what they mean. So I'm going to go over to my shapes box, and I know that here, based on this slide, I want to circle unfamiliar words. So I'm going to circle perished. I mean, I have an idea of what perished means, but I don't often use that word. Same with calamity. Calamity is a pretty uncommon word in my vocabulary, as is audacious. So I've chosen to circle those three words because I want to make myself go back to them to see what they mean. And how I can do that is if I go up to my dictionary tool right here, I highlight that, then I can go to the word and highlight the word. So if I go to perished, now there's definitions that come up. And my first definition is if you suffer death, typically in a violent, sudden, or untimely way. So that makes me think, oh, I knew that it had to do with people dying, but perished because it's so violent really helps me realize how intense the situation was. I can also do the same with calamity. If I just click on the word calamity, the definition will come up. And also audacious as well, see, comes up too. So in order to get your definitions of words that you don't know, make sure you click on the dictionary icon first. Now I'm going to go back to my markup tool and continue reading. The attacks seemed carefully coordinated. The hijacked planes were all en route to California and therefore gorged with fuel, and their departures were spaced within an hour and 40 minutes. Carefully coordinated really stood out to me in that sentence. And when I further read, I saw what went along with it. So en route to California, they were all going to the same place. They were all gorged with fuel. That means there was a lot of fuel in those tanks. And their departures were spaced within an hour and 40 minutes. So just by those 3 points, I think, that serves as proof. Because I want to remember that, if I highlight on something that I've already highlighted, if I put my pointer there, this little menu comes up and I have an option here to write a comment. So I'm going to put in my comment that this shows proof that the attack was carefully coordinated. Okay, well, now I'm going to continue reading. I think I can. No, I can't move these up. Okay. The first American Airlines Flight 11, a Boeing 767 out of Boston for Los Angeles, crashed into the North Tower at 8:48 a.m. 18 minutes later, United Airlines Flight 175, also headed from Boston to Los Angeles, plowed into the South Tower. Then an American Airlines Boeing 757, Flight 77, left Washington's Dulles International Airport bound for Los Angeles, but instead hit the western part of the Pentagon, the military headquarters where 24,000 people work, at 9:40 a.m. So this but instead got me thinking, what was supposed to happen? If this is instead this happened, then something else, there must have been something different. So I'm going to put a comment there because I want to remember that, like, what was supposed to happen. Okay, I'm going to continue reading. Finally, United Airlines Flight 93, a Boeing 757 flying from Newark to San Francisco, crashed near Pittsburgh, raising the possibility that its hijackers had failed in whatever their mission was. Ooh, hijackers had failed. So raising the possibility that hijackers had failed. This goes back to this but instead as well. So I want to highlight, I'm going to put a comment to there too. Because again, I'm left wondering, what was the original plan? Okay. Now, just because I start adding comments, when you click on the comment or when you highlight the comment, just put your mouse over it, your pointer, it will show you what it went to. It's like, for example, see, this comment went to that, but instead that went over there. But if you kind of want to get a visual quickly, I'm going to go over to my drawing pen and I'm just going to put, I'm just going to put like a little arrow here. So I know, well, this but instead went to this question. And then this particular one went to that comment. And it's just helping me to quickly glance at it and get an idea. So let me go back to my markup tool, and I'm going to continue reading. In all, 266 people perished in the 4 planes, and several score more were known dead elsewhere. Well, score more is not a phrase that I use very often, so I'm not really sure what they mean. So again, I'm pulling out my circle. I'm going to circle score because I know a score to be like a football score, a touchdown, or a goalie score, but it doesn't make sense here. So if I click on my dictionary and highlight score, there's a number of different definitions that come up. The first one was what I thought score meant, was the number of points in a game, or even the verb to actually score a point. But if I look at the third option, a group or set of 20 or about 20, now that makes sense. I can say, oh, okay, a score. So if I reread it, 266 people perished in the 4 planes and several score more were known dead elsewhere. That shows me that there was a lot more, because it could be 20 more or 40 more or 60 more. So there's a lot more people than just 266. And as a matter of fact, I think I also want to note that. I'm just going to put my markup pen and see if I can note that as well. And then let me see if I can get a comment. There we go. And that means, there were a lot more people than just 266 who died. I'm going to continue reading. Numerous firefighters, police officers, and other rescue workers who responded to the initial disaster in Lower Manhattan were killed or injured when the buildings collapsed. Hundreds were treated for cuts, broken bones, burns, and smoke inhalation. But the real carnage was concealed for now by the twisted, smoking, ash-choked carcasses of the Twin Towers, in which thousands of people used to work on a weekday. I really was interested in this word choice that the author used here. He wrote twisted, smoking, ash-choked carcasses. So I'm just highlighting that because while it might not be an important note, it did draw my attention to it. So I'm going to add a text box this time. And I think I'm going to write in red just to make sure that I can see it. And I'm going to write very interesting and descriptive word choices. Because it really was. Okay, going to continue reading. For hours after the attacks, rescuers were stymied by other buildings that threatened to topple. There's another word that I'm not 100% sure of. Stymied. I can quickly check. And stymie me, to prevent or hinder the progress of. So that makes me think, well, rescuers were stymied by other buildings that threatened to topple. If you're a rescue worker, if you're a rescuer, then you're trying to save people. But if you're being blocked by other buildings, that means something was going to happen and it was threatening to topple. So they were preventing me from rescuing or preventing the rescuers from doing their job. But by 11 p.m., rescuers had been able to begin serious efforts to locate and remove survivors. Mr. Giuliani said 2 Port Authority police officers had been pulled from the ruins, and he said hope existed that more people could be saved. Earlier, police officer volunteers using dogs had found 4 bodies in the smoldering, stories-high pile of rubble where the towers had once stood, and had taken them to a makeshift morgue in the lobby of an office building at Vesey and West Streets. Within an hour of the attacks, the United States was on a war footing. War footing, again, is something that I find interesting. I'm going to actually see, there is no definition that's found for that, but it was interesting enough to me that I did want to highlight it because that was a word choice that I hadn't heard before. So I'm actually going to, because I thought that in my head, I'm actually going to write that down. What does war footing really mean? So you can see when I'm making my comments, I can either add a text box somewhere in the article, or I can make it as a comment. It just really depends on how much room that I have. So I've gone and just walked you through what I'm thinking and some of the tools that I use when I'm annotating some text. And I just chose to do the first page for you. So I hope that this helped you at least understand a little bit about some of the ways that you can take notes on the actual text that you're reading to help you interact better and remember more about what is in the article.